So I'm going to take you through now. Thank you for staying. I appreciate everybody who stayed. I'm making mental note of everybody who stayed. Everybody I'm making a mental note over here. Everybody who left, I'm going to forget they didn't see it. But I appreciate your staying. I know it's late. But I hope I'm going to show you something now which is going to intrigue you. First of all, I just want to answer a question that Ksenia asked, that the Megillah to Esther was written by Mordechai and Esther. After the event occurred, they wrote it down, and like all our works, our prophets and our writings, it was written with Ruach HaKodesh, or prophecy, something difficult to explain, but direct connection to Hashem. And therefore the way they wrote it, yeah, I do. Therefore the way they wrote it is very important. Every word is important. Pass it back away. Yeah.
So wouldn't it be biased? They only wrote it from their point of view.
Well, I guess they're writing it with the Ruach HaKodesh, though. Hashem was, as they're writing it, Hashem is in contact with them. So they're writing really what Hashem wants them to write. So it's not really their point of view, it's Hashem's message as how Hashem wants to be communicated. As all the writings, all the prophets. Okay. So what I'd like to do with you now is I'd like to show you something that demonstrates God's control of history. And this is going to be nothing less than a prophecy. And it's a prophecy which we're going to find directly in the book of Esther. Now we have to remember that Esther and Mordechai were prophets. And prophecy means that you can have control of history. That's the definition of prophecy. The book of Esther was written 2,300 years ago, approximately. So for them to know something which would occur 2,300 years later would be some... Jack, just sit over there. It's that way, yeah.
Yeah.
It's over there. Yeah. Okay. Jack is one of my old-time students. In the old days. But for something to occur 2,300 years later takes a tremendous amount of understanding and being in contact with the one who controls history. Question, if you listen to the radio and you hear that it's going to rain on Tuesday, is that prophecy?
No.
Why not?
Prediction.
Because it's prediction. There are patterns that we can follow and logically tell when things are going to happen. For prophecy to be prophecy, it has to be something which is completely beyond anything the prophet could have known. So surely, when a prophecy is said about something which will occur 2,300 years later, it certainly allows us to pause and to reflect for a moment and to see that Mordechai and Esther were in touch with the one who controls history. And of course, that's the Almighty. So let's take a look at our sheets we have in front of us. And let's begin like this. We have a certain principle in Judaism that which happened to the fathers will happen to the children. Maisa Avos Siman Labanim. Things that occurred to our great-great-great-grandparents, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, will occur to us. We know that Yaakov was always pursued by his brother Esav. And in fact, whenever Yaakov, it seems, tried to reach a new spiritual level, there was Esav trying to stop him. We know that when Yaakov got the blessing, Esav wanted to kill him. We know that when Yaakov wanted to come back into the land of Israel, after being gone for 22 years, there was Esav with 400 men. And we know that even when we were trying to bury Yaakov, and the Machpelah in Hebron, if we know the story, all of a sudden there was Esav trying to stop the burial. Esav would always be there to try to stop Yaakov from achieving a certain type of connection to God. Esav had a grandson. His name was Amalek. And he was the founder of a nation called the Amalekim. Amalek has been probably the most evil nation throughout history. And it seems that this nation, according to the Zohar, according to our Kabbalistic thought, is a nation that really has one goal. And that goal is to fight the Jewish people and stop the infusion of holiness in this world. And therefore that means, whenever the Jewish people seem to be on a way to holiness, you know what happens? There is Amalek. And it seems that whenever the Jewish people try to come into the land of Israel, guess what? There is Amalek. First time we meet Amalek in the Torah is where? is when we came out of Egypt. We're on our way. We just received the Torah at Har Sinai. We're on our way to the land of Israel. And there comes Amalek and attacks us. And you know what? To attack us, they had to cross 1,200 kilometers of desert. They actually lived in the Saudi Arabian peninsula. They had to cross all the way over Saudi Arabia, all the way over Sinai, in order to attack us. Were we invading their territory? No. Were we threatening their water rights? Were we acting as aggressors? Did we want their land? Absolutely not. Yet they went out of their way 1,200 kilometers to attack us. Second time we meet Amalek is about 1,700 years later in the story of the Megillah. All of a sudden, after 70 years of exiles, I'm sure Rabbi Rutenberg was speaking about before, 70 years of exile, we were ready to return to the land of Israel. First temple was destroyed. We were in Babylon, then in Persia. 70 years had gone by. All of a sudden, at the end of the 70th year, what happens? A man arises in Persia, and his name is Haman. And who was Haman? If you look at your sheets in front of you, it says in the scroll of Esther, King Achashverosh promoted Haman, the son of Hamdasa, Ha'agagi, V'yinisa'eu, and rose him up. Now why is this significant? If we go back to the book of Shmuel on the left-hand side, Samuel, it says, V'yomer Shmuel, Higisu alai es Agag melech Amalek. We know that the job of Shaul was actually to destroy the nation of Amalek. Yeah. He almost succeeded, but he kept one person alive. Who was that one person? The king. His name was Agag. Why did he keep him alive? It's a question. He wanted to, under some sort of Kiddush Hashem, to come by, show the king is alive. He had been commanded to kill them all. During this one night where Agag was alive, the last survivor of Amalek, while in prison, somehow a woman was snuck in. He was able to produce a child. That child went on to rebuild the nation of Amalek. Apparently after it, what happened was when Shmuel heard about it, he took his sword, he killed Agag. We're going to read it this week in Parsha Zachor. We're going to read it in Shabbos this week in the Haftarah. But from Agag, Amalek was rebuilt. Now if you look again at the scroll of Esther on the right-hand side, Haman was who? He was the son of Hamdasa, Ha'agagi, V'yinasehu. He was a direct descendant of Agag. He was Amalek. And how coincidental it is that here the Jewish people are about to go back into the land of Israel, and who comes up? There is Amalek with a mission to destroy the Jewish people entirely. What Haman wanted to do is he wanted to destroy us physically, he wanted to destroy us as a nation, he wanted to take away our Torah, he wanted to destroy any trace of Jewish wealth. And by the way, that's why in Purim we do 4 things that reflect the opposite. We eat a big meal. You try to destroy my body, we're going to eat. You try to destroy us as a people, we're going to give presents to each other to show that there's love between us. You try to destroy Jewish money, we're going to give charity. Matanas Levyonim. You try to destroy Torah, we're going to add another mitzvah, the Megillah. Anything he tried to do to us, we reversed it. But there he is trying to stop us. Okay. Question is like this. Where is the third time that Amalek tried to stop us? Well, let's see. Let's fast forward in history another 2,000 years, 2,300 years. We come to the year 1939, 1940. At the turn of the 20th century, in 1914, 1917, Balfour, who was one of the Lord Balfour in England, gave the Jewish people permission to return to the land of Israel. There was immigration, as we know, some immigration. Jews were starting to come back to the land. Very interestingly, as we were once again, after 2,000 years of exile, beginning to come back, the Zionist movement and all we know about the state of Israel was beginning to form. As we're starting to come back to the state of Israel, what happens? Or sorry, to build a state, what happens? All of a sudden, a person emerges in Germany, Adolf Hitler, Yimach Shemo, with one mission. What's his mission? Complete obliteration of the Jewish people. Now, question is, just as Esav tried to stop Yaakov 3 times from attaining spiritual completion, it seems that Esav's grandchild Amalek, and his descendants want to stop Jacob's children from attaining completion. And therefore, whenever we seem to be on our way back to the land of Israel, guess what? There's Amalek. After the Torah is given to us, we try to go back, they attack us. After 70 years of exile, we try to go back, there's Haman. After the Zionist movement begins, there's Hitler. Question is, can we prove that the Germans were really the descendants of Amalek? Can we prove it? Look on the page. And I want to read to you from a prophecy written in about the year 400. And this prophecy reads as follows. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, said Rabbi Yitzchak, Maide chasiv al titen Hashem ma'ave rasha zamamo al tefek yeruma sela. Rabbi Yitzchak said, what's meant by the verse when King David said, "Oh God, don't grant the desires of this evil man. Don't let him expand his wickedness, let he raise himself above others"? What is he talking about? What's King David talking about? Amar Yaakov lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Jacob said to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, Master of the world, Al titein la'esav harasha tavas libo. Don't let Esav, that evil man, go after the desires of his heart. Zamamu al tafek. Don't remove the bit from his mouth. What's a bit? A bit is like a horse. Has a thing in its mouth that controls it, that prevents it from running wild. Don't take that bit. Don't take that restraint away from Esav. Why? Zugermamia shel Edom. Who's it referring to? Because this is referring to Germamia of Edom. What does the word Germamia sound like to you? Germany. Germamia of Edom. She'ilmale hen yotzim. Because if they're to go out, machrivin kola olam kulo, they will destroy the entire world. Interesting. What nation twice in history, in this century, not this century, in the past century, started 2 world wars?
Germans.
What nation is responsible through this world war for the death of over 100 million people? In addition to 6 million Jews?
Germany.
Germamia shel Edom. A nation called Germamia of Edom. Because if they will be allowed to go out, they will destroy the entire world. That's to say, don't let this nation be strong. Because if it's strong, they're going to be devastating. By the way, what did the Allied powers do to Germany right after the war? They divided them into 2. West Germany and East Germany. Unprecedented. We've never seen that in history, that a nation is divided. It seems that the world knows that Germany cannot be united. You allow this nation to go out, they will destroy the world. Rabbi Hanan says, Tlas ma'at Tiritaga, there are 300 crowned princes in Germania of Edom, and 365 chieftains in Rome. Every day one goes out to meet the other, and one of them is killed. And they all have the trouble of appointing a king again. Rabbi Hanani says one way of controlling this place called Germania is that they seem to always fight with a place called Rome. By the way, anyone know a little bit of history? In the Middle Ages, there was a constant war. There was the 30-year war. There was the 100-year war. Who was fighting? It was the Habsburgs, right? Which were the Germans, against the Holy Roman Empire. That was the fight, Germany and Italy. Interesting. Because what's it implying? If they get together, they're even more dangerous. What happened in World War II, by the way? Germany united with Italy. In fact, the Germans broke every alliance. They broke it with the Russians, right? They fooled Stalin, broke that alliance. They broke all alliance except one alliance, one treaty. What was that? With the Italians. They wanted the Italians on their side. It's wild because Italy is not known for their fine army. But somehow Hitler knew that if he's going to be successful, he needs to unite with Rome. Very fascinating. So let's think for a moment and see what if this Germania could in fact be the Germania which we know as Germany. Now what's very interesting, by the way, and I have to tell you this, when the Talmud was written, it was written in the year 400. In the year 400, Germany did not exist. Germany became a nation in what year? 1870. Bismarck united it. It became a nation. What was it beforehand? Well, let's take a look on the bottom of the page. It says in The Rise and the Fall of the Third Reich by William Shirer, let's read on the bottom. By the end of the Middle Ages, which had seen Britain and France emerge as unified nations, Germany remained a crazy patchwork of some 300 individual states. That's interesting. Look back at the Talmud. What does the Talmud say? This refers to Germania of Edom. Rav Chanana bar Chanina said there are 300 crown princes in Germania of Edom. How did he know that? There was no Germania, there was no Germany then. But what do we see at the end of the Middle Ages? Germany remained a patchwork of 300 individual states. What Bismarck did in 1870, he took them all and united them into one place called Germany. How did the Talmud know something that was going to occur over 2,000 years later? Interesting. But let's see if we can identify to make sure this Germania is in fact the Germany that we know it. Rashi says, Germania is the name of a monarchy from the kingdom of Edom. That's where one of Esav's children settled. And we know that Esav's children were Amalek. Rav Yaakov Emden says it's likely that this refers to Germany or Ashkenaz. Interesting. Something you don't have on your page, that I'm going to share with you, we get a description of the color of the hair of the people who lived in Germania. The Vilna Gaon quotes the Mishnah in the Goyim, describing a type of blemish a person gets when they speak Lashon Hara, and he describes it as a certain white blotch. You know what his language is? The color of the hair of the people of Germania. What do the Germans pride themselves in?
Blonde hair, blue eyes.
Right, the Aryan, the blonde hair, blue eyes. Interesting. We also see something very fascinating. The first time we're introduced to Amalek, we see him attacking the Jewish people. Amalek is known for their warlike fashion, the warlike manner. What does the Talmud tell us about this place called Germania? It says it's a place that if you take the bit out of their mouth, they will destroy the world, testing to this warlike nature. You know, I have a quote over here from a history book, and it says, let me just read to you the quote and tell me what you hear in the relevance to it, to what we're saying. It says as follows. It says that the historian Marabu said as follows: Prussia, which is Germany, Prussia was one of the states in Germany, is not a state possessing an army. It is rather an army that has taken over a nation. In fact, Germany had a certain type of conscription where you had to serve actively for 2 years, and you had to serve another 14 years in what was called the home defense. You were in the army for 16 years in Germany, in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s, 16 years. A very warlike nation. But what about the character of the people of this place? Amalek is described in the following way. He's described, as Esav is described, as a chazir, as a pig. You know, many animals have different signs. Some non-kosher animals have different ways why they're not kosher. To be kosher, you have to have a split hoof, and you have to chew your cud. That means you have to have more than one stomach. The pig is the only animal that has a split hoof, but does not chew its cud. It represents spiritually the idea of hypocrisy. Look at me, I'm kosher on the outside, but inside I have so many blemishes, I'm totally treif. Does that not describe the German people? Bitteschön, Dankeschön. Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, gas chambers at the same time. As Jews are being gassed, the commandant is listening to Mozart and Beethoven and Bach and Wagner. On the outside, so polite. Bitteschön, Dankeschön. On the inside, so corrupt. You know, it says that in 1898, the Kaiser, the German Kaiser, the head of Germany, he came to Jerusalem. And in fact, anyone who's been to Jerusalem and been to the Jaffa Gate will notice the Jaffa Gate is very tall. You know why it's very tall? Because they wanted to allow the Kaiser to go through Old Jerusalem on his horse. So they had to raise the height of the gate. It's a famous thing we know. However, in 1898, the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Zecher Kodesh Levracha, he said as follows: when everyone wanted to come out to greet the Kaiser, he said, I am not going. And why did people want to come out? Because it's a mitzvah to make a blessing on a king. Doesn't matter if he's a good king or he's a bad king. He's supposed to make a blessing. Why? Because Hashem gave him rulership. And if you see a king today, if you ever see Queen Elizabeth, it's to say a blessing. Hashem gave this person rulership. So people went out, they wanted to make the blessing over the Kaiser. It says that Chaim Sonnenfeld refused to go. Because he said that he has a tradition in the name of the Vilna Gaon, that the German nation is from the seed of Amalek. They exhibit the classic symptoms of Amalek. Externally polite and friendly, bitte schön, danke schön, but harboring a deep and bitter hatred of the Jewish people. You know, I heard a story that a Rav Hutner, Zeker Tzaddik Kodesh Levracha, a friend of his from Europe came to visit him after the war, and he came and he said to him, "Do you recognize me?" He said, "No." He said, "Don't you remember me? We studied together in yeshiva in Slobodka." He said, "I don't recognize you." The person had been through the concentration camps. He said, "Who are you?" He said his name. He said, "Oh my gosh, that's you." He said to Rav Hutner, "I was thinking about you every day while I was in the concentration camp." He said, "Why?" He said, "Remember when we were in yeshiva, we used to argue about the Germans. I used to say we could learn a lot from the Germans. And you used to say the Germans, no, they're false. They're polite on the outside, but corrupt on the inside." And Rav Hutner said, "Yeah, I kind of remember that." And he said, "Do you remember what we argued about? We argued about two words. Nicht wahr." In German, nicht wahr means, isn't it so? You know, in German, I speak a little German, when you ask directions, for example, you say, "How do you get to the restaurant?" You say, "Make a right, make a left, another right, nicht wahr," which means, isn't that so? And it's a way of saying, I'm not any better than you. You know as well as I do. You know, nicht wahr, isn't that not so? You know how to do it as well as I do. So remember I said to you, he said to Rav Hutner, that I used to say the fact that Germans say nicht wahr, it's such a fine expression of how considerate they are. They don't want another person to feel less than them. Isn't it so? You know how to do it. Nicht wahr, isn't it so? So Rav Hutner said back, you said back to me, "No, it's false, it's a lie." He said, "One day I was in the concentration camp, and one of the guards came over to me and he put a stick in my hand, and he said, 'I want you to hit that Jew.' And I said, 'I'm not going to hit that Jew.' He said, 'If you don't hit that Jew, I'm going to shoot you.' So I took the stick, and I started hitting him, but I tried to hold back my arm so it wouldn't be painful. This enraged the guard. He grabbed the stick from my hand, and he started hitting the Jew, and hitting the Jew, and hitting the Jew. And he said, 'That's the way you beat a Jew, nicht wahr?' When I heard those words, I knew the Germans were polite on the outside, but totally corrupt on the inside. Let's take it one more step. So what do we see? We see a nation talked about in the Talmud called Germania. A nation of 300 princes, which the encyclopedia tells us that was Germany. 300 princedoms. We see the color of their hair, blonde. We see their personalities, total hypocrisy, polite on the outside, but so corrupt on the inside. Question, can we conclusively say this is Amalek? Well, let's ask Adolf Hitler. Fascinatingly, it says when Amalek attacked us, as we were about to come into the land of Israel after we received the Torah at Har Sinai, it says in the Medrash that the Jews that they killed, they took the Milah, the bris Milah. They took the organ of bris Milah. They threw it up into the air, and they said to God, "This is for you. This is your covenant. We want nothing to do with it." Amalek hates bris Milah. Brit Milah. Why do they hate Brit Milah so much? Because Brit Milah symbolizes control. Symbolizes the fact that you cannot be an animal. That you have to live your life according to God's law, not according to your animalistic instinct. And that's why we make a treaty with God on the point of the body, which is the most physical. Because we're saying to God, we're going to take our lives and we're devoted to you. I'm not ruled by the animal in me. I'm ruled by your word. I stand up straight to teach me that my head rules over my heart and over my body. Unlike an animal who walks on all fours, no difference between head, heart, and instinct. So they hated bris Milah. And they took the bris Milah of the Jews that they killed and they threw them up to God, the Medrash tells us. Listen to Adolf Hitler. Yimach Shemo. This is a quote from Hermann Rauschung, was a reporter and did an interview with them in 1940. "They regard me as an uneducated barbarian," he exclaimed jubilantly. "Yes, we are barbarians. We want to be barbarians. It's an honorable title. I have no conscience. My conscience is Adolf Hitler. The Ten Commandments have lost their validity. Conscience is a Jewish invention. It is a blemish on the soul, like circumcision on the body." Interesting. What does Hitler have against circumcision? Circumcision. He has to attack circumcision. Brit Milah. Speaking through the mouth of Amalek. The struggle for world domination will be fought entirely between us, between Germans and Jews. All else is facade and illusion. That was Adolf Hitler. Amalek was after one thing: to destroy the Jewish people because we represent God. Hitler was after one thing: to destroy the Jewish people. That was his war aim. In fact, there's a book called, many books on it, that as the soldiers and generals were pleading on the Russian front, send the trains and send blankets and send guns. You know what Hitler did with those trains? He sent them to Hungary for the last transport of the Jews in Budapest to Auschwitz. He had one war aim: destruction of world Jewry. That was it. That's Amalek. Very interesting, by the way. I saw an amazing thing online from U.S. News and World Report. And listen to this: how Hitler would have rebuilt Berlin.
Which one is that?
What's that?
You have it over here?
Yeah, this is from it's out of line. This is from I'm trying to news agency it is. I'll find it after. But it says as follows: how Hitler would have rebuilt Berlin. Listen to what he says. What did the Talmud call this place? What do they call Germany? What did the Talmud call Germany? Germania. What do the Germans call Germany, by the way? No, they call it Deutschland. What do the French call it? Allemand. Only in English we call Germany. But listen to what is in the heart of the German. Hitler wanted to rebuild Berlin to make it his capital of his Reich. In close collaboration with his confident and architect of choice, Albert Speer, Hitler sought to cast his megalomania in concrete by radically reshaping the city center. His world capital would be called Germania. In the Führer's own words, would only be comparable to ancient Egypt, Babylon, or Rome. Hitler wanted to rename his city Germania. Interesting. They don't use that word, but somewhere it resonates in their culture, that they know they're Germania, the Germania of the Talmud. Okay, good. Turn your pages. Let's take a look at Megillah Esther for a moment. At the end of the Megillah Esther, as Rabbi Nuremberg told you the story, I'm sure, we know that Haman did not succeed, and he and his 10 sons were hung. And the description we have in front of us over here is actually the way the Talmud, not the Talmud, the Megillah Esther, the book of Esther, lays out the death of the 10 sons. It's written in a column. On the right hand is the column, the 10 names. And on the left hand side is the word v'et, which in Hebrew doesn't mean anything. It's just like saying and. So there's a line of 10 and a line of 10. It's very interesting because it's the only place in all of Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Kesuvim, in all of our writings, where it writes it like this. And our commentators say the reason why Esther wrote it this way is to make it look like a gallows. They were hung. There's a gallows. You get hung. You can't come out. You can't come up again. And the side over here, it's interesting. It's like another gallows. And that's what commentators ask, and they say, what's that second line of gallows doing? Okay. Now I'm going to read to you. You have it in your translation, but it's difficult to read a little. So listen to I'm going to read where it's underlined from the Hebrew. Actually, one line before. It says as follows. V'yomer hamelech le'Esther. The king said to Esther, Amalek b'Shushan. The king says to Esther, the queen, in Shushan Abir, in the capital Shushan. He said, the Jews had just killed 500 of their enemy in Shushan. V'esa seres b'nei Haman, and they had just killed the 10 sons of Haman. B'shah b'ninos Amalek. Ma atzu, Esther, what do you want? Ma she'elasech, what do you ask for? V'yinatin lach, I'll give you anything you want. Ma b'kashasech, od v'tias, anything you want, Esther, you shall have. We know at the end of the Megillah, we know that Achashverosh was totally in love with Esther, as we know, right? So devoted to Esther. And that's the reason why he allowed Esther and Mordechai to decree that all their enemies should be killed. And after the 10 sons are hung, he says to Esther, Esther, what can I do for you? What do you want? Now, Achashverosh, you have to understand, was the richest man in the world. He ruled from Hod to Lakush, from India to Ethiopia. The richest man in the world. He was offering Esther a blank check. Esther, you can have whatever you want. Here's my credit card, honey. Go out, have a great time, do whatever you want to do. You want to buy something over there in Africa, do it. You want to buy something, whatever you want, it's all yours, whatever you want. Listen to what Esther asks for. Tomer Esther, Imal Melech Tov, if it pleases the king, Yinatin Gam Mochar, allow it to happen tomorrow, La Yudin to the Jews, Asher B'Shushan, La Sos Kedas Hayom, to allow to happen like what happened today. She says, if it pleases the king, allow it to happen tomorrow, like it happened today, and please let the 10 sons of Haman be hung on the tree. What's the problem with Esther's request? She's asking the king that let it happen tomorrow, like it happened today, and please allow the 10 sons of Haman that these should be hung on the tree. Wait a minute. 10 sons of Haman are dead. Why is she asking for 10 dead men to be hung? Alex?
She's trying to save what will happen later on, which would be in World War II after during the
Nuremberg. Okay.
trials.
Good. You're on time. Let's take it slow. Good. Right. Let's look at the problem. The problem is, we see that these verses don't make any sense. We see clearly the 10 sons of Haman are dead. The king asks her for anything she wants. She says, let it happen tomorrow like it happened today, that the 10 sons of Haman should be hung. I'll tell you something, my friends. This line in the Megillah has bothered us for 2,300 years. 2,300 years we have not known what Esther is asking for. Now, we have a tradition in the Megillah. Whose name is never mentioned in the Megillah? God. However, when we refer to the king, Hamelech, referring to God. When Esther says Melech Achashverosh, King Achashverosh, that's Achashverosh. Now, so listen once again to what Esther is saying. It says, Imal HaMelech Tov. She's talking to Achashverosh or to God?
God.
Yinaten Gam Machar. Please allow tomorrow, like it happened today. Yes, the 10 sons of Haman should be hung on the tree. She's asking God for something to happen in the future. We have not known for 2,300 years what she was asking until 65 years ago. What happened 65 years ago? What happened was, well, actually, you don't have the picture in front of me, but I'm going to have to show you. Just look up with me for a moment, please. Look up with me, if you don't mind. I'm going to show you something from another picture. I usually do this on, like on an overhead projector. What happened, we know what happened in 1946 was there were trials, Alex pointed out, called the Nuremberg trials. At the Nuremberg trial, the Nazis who had perpetrated this tremendous crime against humanity were brought to justice, and it resulted in 11 men being sentenced to death. That was in 1946. 11 men were sentenced to death. It was a very fascinating trial, because at the trial a lot of questions came up as to whether or not what the Germans did was really a crime. Can you accuse 10 people Or was this a crime of a nation? Was it right to single out individuals? Was one person really responsible for the death of 6 million? It was a very interesting trial. And at the end they concluded yes, and 11 of the top Nazi thugs were sentenced to death by hanging. Now, what happened the night before the sentence, night before the hanging, Goering, who was the number 2 man in Germany, committed suicide by poison. A capsule of cyanide was snuck into his cell. It's a question how it got there to this day. 2 hours before he was supposed to die by hanging, he took the poison, committed suicide. New York Times reads, date is October 16th, 1946. Goering ends life by poison. And here's a courtroom photo of the Nazi war criminals. Now, it's interesting, by the way. First of all, 10 others hanged in Nuremberg prison for Nazi war crimes. Doomed men on gallows pray for Germany. 10 were hung. 1 committed suicide. You know what's interesting, by the way? How many children did Haman have?
10.
Had 11. Who was the 11th? He had a daughter. What happened to his daughter? What happened? Remember the story? When Mordechai is on the horse, and Haman is leading Mordechai on the horse. So his daughter looks down from a window, and she thinks that's her father on the horse, and Mordechai is leading him. So she takes all the waste from the house. She dumps it out the window, and hits her father right in the head. Her father looks up. She looks down. She's so ashamed of what she did. She leaps out the window, kills herself. So it's interesting. 10 die, 1 commits suicide. Haman, 11 children, 10 die, 1 commits suicide. By the way, please do not take this too seriously, but I'm going to tell you anyway. In a book that came out a number of years ago on the personal lives of the leaders of the Third Reich, Goering have known to have been a transvestite. That's to say, he wore women's clothing under his uniform. So take it or leave it, whatever you want to do with that one. Now, what was interesting was this. The sentence was in June of 1946. In June 1946, they concluded that these 11 men should hang, or these 11 should die. The problem was, number one, the world started protesting. How can you kill? Like this is, you're acting like the Nazis. They killed, not you're killing. And number two, there was an argument of how they should die. The Germans pushed that they should die by firing squad, because firing squad, to be shot with a bullet, is a military death. It's a noble death. To be hung is a criminal death. It means that you're a common criminal. Criminals are hung. So there was a fight back and forth. Should they die? And if they die, should it be firing squad or should it be hanging? And this went on for a number of months. Finally, if you look in the pages on your sheets in front of me, turn the page there. If you look on your sheet, look at the calendar. They finally died, interestingly enough, on the 21st of Tishrei, which happened to be Hoshana Rabbah. And if you look on the Zohar says, what is Hoshana Rabbah? On the 7th day of the Sukkot holiday, Hoshana Rabbah, the judgment of the nations of the world is finalized. Sentences are issued from the residence of the king. Judgments are aroused and executed on that day. So it's interesting. By pushing it off, finally the death they were executed was Hoshana Rabbah, when the king executes justice on the nations. Benny?
Why didn't they push for gas chambers?
That's not the way. Civilization doesn't do that. We don't do that. That's the way of men. Yeah. You're right. They shouldn't meet a connected meet. I hear the question. But now turn back with me again, everybody. And I want to show you something, another part of this prophecy. Look now at the names of the sons of Haman. And I want to show you something. Notice that I circled letters in the first name, in the 7th name, and in the 10th name. Notice that I circled the Tuf, I circled a Shin, and I circled a Zion. And that's interesting because I want to tell you something. Normally, a letter in all of the Torah, the writings of the prophets, are of a uniform size. In 22 instances, in the entire Torah Nevi'im Kesuvim, consisting of over 700,000 letters, there are only 22 cases where the letters are small or oversized. 3 of them happen to be right here, within 10 words of each other. A Tuf, a Shin, and a Zayin. And I'll tell you something. For 2,300 years, we have not known why Esther, when she wrote the Megillah, chose to write those 3 letters small. However, we discovered it in 1946, because if you look at the date when they were executed in the year 5707, which is the Hebrew date Tuf Shin Zayin, Tuf Shin and Zayin. 5707. But maybe you'll tell me this, Rabbi Kraft, wait a minute. That's not so good. You know why? Because in history, the world was created 5,769 years ago. How many times has the year 707 come up in the last 5,769 years? Well, let's think. How many times? There was 707. And right now we're in the year 5,769 from creation. So there was the year 707. There was the year 1,707. There was 2,707. There was 3,707. There was 4,707. And there was 5,707. 6 times. So how do we know that Esther is referring to the 6th time it occurred? Maybe she's talking about the 5th time, or for the 4th time. She was about the 3rd. How do we know she's talking about the 6th time? Go back to your Megillah for a second. What do we see as the first letter of the last name of the last son? We notice a Vav, which is oversized. Again, there are only 22 letters of over 700,000 that are either undersized or lower sized. Again, we have 4 of them right here. 3 are undersized and 1 is oversized, a large Vav. What number is Vav? 6. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav. Esther is giving us a date. And the 6th time that 707 occurs, there's going to be a need, Hashem, to hang the 10 sons of Haman. Because the world's not going to want to hang them. The world's not going to want to kill them. The world's not going to want to bring them to justice. Or the world wants to treat them like military people and bring them to the firing squad. But Hashem, we need your help to get them to be hung. We didn't understand what Esther was asking until 1946. Now I'll tell you something, my friends. You know what triggered us? What triggered us to this was what happened at the trial. Let's read together an account from Newsweek, October 28th, 1946. The 13 steps. Frantic prison officials determined that no other victim should escape them. At once shackled the 10 surviving convicts in their cells. Because Goering committed suicide 2 hours before. Then in 90 minutes, in the early hours of October 16th, they followed each other to the gallows. Former Foreign Minister Yochanan von Ribbentrop, pale and disheveled, but unflinching, inheriting Goring's #1 spot, flanked by American MPs and a chaplain, he walked the 35 yards in the cell block to the brightly lighted gymnasium at 1:11 a.m. Blinded by the glare, he stood inside the door, facing the 3 black wooden scaffolds, erected for a floor where American soldiers, GIs, had played basketball only 4 days before. The manacles were removed and his hands bound behind him with a black leather thong. Then Ribbentrop walked steadily to the foot of the 13 steps. He gave his name firmly, mounted the 8-foot platform, where Major Sergeant John C. Woods, veteran executioner of 347 men and 15 years, awaited him. What was the name of the executioner? John C. Woods. Now, don't take this too seriously, but I'm just going to tell you. When Esther says to the king, Tomer Esther, Imal Melech Tov, Yinatim Gam Bachar, please allow it to happen tomorrow. The Et Aseret B'nei Haman, please allow the 10 sons of Haman, Yitnu ala eitz, to be hung on the eitz. What does eitz mean in Hebrew? Tree or wood. Just so happens the executioner's name was John C. Woods. Wow. It's just a joke. Don't take that too seriously. Okay, it's not seriously. Now, he stood on the trap beneath the rope, suspended from a heavy wooden beam overhead, while an army belt was pulled tightly around his ankles. God protect Germany God have mercy on my soul, he cried in a ringing voice, then asked, may I say something? An American officer nodded. My last wish is that Germany realize its unity, and an understanding be reached between the East and the West. I wish peace to the world. He stared straight ahead, lips tightly set as the black hood dropped over his head. Then came the noose, and the trap banged open at 1:16. While the stiffening body still hung behind the screen that hid the gallows' dark interior, 3 knocks sounded at the gymnasium door, and Field Marshal William Keitel, clothes neatly pressed and shoes shined, and entered. After him the guards, with precise, ruthless efficiency, brought in the others one by one to deliver their last speeches and die. Only Julius Streicher, he was the editor of Der Stürmer, this tremendous anti-Semitic paper, went without dignity. He had to be pushed across the floor, wild-eyed and screaming Heil Hitler. Mounting the steps, he cried out, and now I go to God. He's going to hell. Believe me, he's not going to God. He stared at the witnesses facing the gallows and shouted, Purim Fest, 1946. Purim is a Jewish feast. My friends, what did we see? Did we see a prophecy?
Yeah.
Did we see something? How did Esther know to ask the king that in the future, 2,300 years later, there would be a need to hang 10 sons of Haman, 10 more Amalekim? How did Esther know to compose the exact date and to put it inside of the 10 sons' names? Why did she leave over an extra set of gallows? Because we're referring to there's going to be a need for 10 more to be hung on those gallows. Now, interestingly enough, by the way, supposing the execution had been in June of 1946, what would the Hebrew year have been? It would have been 5706, because when does the Jewish year begin? Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah. The fact that it was pushed to October meant that the Hebrew year, 5707. It's interesting, 11 men were supposed to have been hung. But Esther asked for 10, didn't she? So one of them had to, of course, oblige and to commit suicide 2 hours before. And of course, it's on Hoshana Rabbah, the day when judgment is executed for the nations. And their own Russia, their own man, reveals to us that this prophecy is coming true. As he's about to be hung, he himself screams out, this is a replay of Purim. I see it. Did he know Jewish history? Maybe. Did God put words in his mouth that we should know the prophecy that Esther was alluding to? Maybe. But one thing we see is that contained within this scroll is knowledge of an event that occurred 2,300 years in the future. Thank you for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that. Question?